I am the Radar Research and Development Division Chief at the National Severe Storms Laboratory, or NSSL, in Norman, Oklahoma.
Cool. Um, Before we get into talking about some of the technology was featured in the movie that's out right now, Twisters, can you give us a little bit of background about what the NSSL is?
The National Severe Storms Laboratory in Norman, Oklahoma is a laboratory underneath NOAA, or the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, that focuses on doing research and development for the National Weather Service and for the weather enterprise in general to help protect, save lives and property from severe weather hazards.
One of the sort of main projects in the movie that's out right now, Twisters, is the first movie they had the Dorothy Project. This movie they focused on something called phased array radar, or PAR, and I would say unlike Dorothy in the original, this one actually has some real world counterparts to it. So can you tell us a little bit about what phased array radar actually is?
Yeah, so phased array radar, or PAR, as you probably heard it called in the movie, is a technology that's been around for decades for military applications for tracking planes and other point targets. But it's something that we've also been working on here at the National Severe Storms Laboratory since the early 2000s. PARs have thousands of individual elements on a flat antenna that direct the beam electronically instead of mechanically, like what you'd see from a traditional rotating dish radar that's currently used in the existing national radar network. PARs allow radars, therefore, to rescan areas very quickly and also adapt scanning strategies for various situations.
You said this is different from what we use currently for weather radar across the country. What are some of the advantages and disadvantages of this new radar platform? And is PAR what could be the future of weather service radar?
So PARs are a potential replacement option for the current existing dish radar network that we have, and that's one of a number of options. In terms of what PARs can offer, they can offer a much faster, what we call volumetric update, or scanning through the entire depth of the atmosphere, than what current dish radars can do. And it would be probably on the order of 3 or 4 or 5 times faster than we can currently do with the existing radar network. We have done a lot of research over the past a couple of decades that has shown that we get an improved understanding and representation of storm evolution and processes, and also have shown, at least for single polarization radar, that we have improved warning performance, and including the improved lead time for tornado warnings and severe thunderstorm warnings. We're currently starting to do some evaluation of what that looks like for dual pole radar, which is what has been implemented across our entire national radar network and been in place for over 10 years. We have some investigations going on right now based on the work that we've done to collect the data over the last several years to now use that and put that in front of forecasters to see how that works and how they use that data to make warning decisions. And also in the future, we hope to see how it is incorporated into radar algorithms that they may be using for that as well, and potentially even models down the road.
In Twisters, part of what they're doing is trying to gain, kind of like the first movie, they're trying to gain better understanding of actual tornado formation by using these radars. And that seems like it has a pretty good, maybe not in the same way, but a pretty good analog to what it is that you guys are doing.
Yeah, there are some similarities. I think one similarity is just that the concept of having lots of different radars and of individual elements on the radar. You saw kind of a grid, a box that had maybe 100 or so different elements on their radars. We have thousands, just because our radars are our size be much larger to have an narrow beam width and be able to kind of nail down on things from larger distances more easily. So I think some of the similarities are that, similar to the phased array radars that we operate, you have, in the case of the movie, because it's a smaller, more mobile radar, that obviously you can't take a huge radar out into the field. It can use hundreds or so probably elements, based on what I saw in the movie, to kind of scan very flexibly and electronically, like we can do with our much larger radar that can see greater distances. But the kind of general principles are similar in that you have a much more flexible radar than a dish radar that has to be spinning mechanically and has to be pointing just one beam at one time. The research application, this would be true for any radar, you're looking to study a specific phenomena. So they're often studying one specific tornado and looking to get at close range, which they would need to do with a smaller radar to be able to see it more closely and be able to absorb it more easily. Whereas the kind of concepts we're working on are to be able to surveil or do a surveillance scan of the entire atmosphere going out a couple hundred kilometers or even up to 100+ miles to be able to kind of tell what's happening over a larger area that you would be looking at more than just one storm.
The goal for the research that you're doing, and seemingly at least part of the goal from the research of the movie, um, at the end of the day, you want to get a better understanding of what's going on in the atmosphere, and then take that understanding and apply it to real world forecasts and warnings, essentially, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, in the case of twisters, they're looking at a specific storm at very close range. In our case, we can choose to look at a specific storm for longer ranges, or we could be surveilling the entire atmosphere to get a sense of what a concept of operations might look like for the future. And we're doing a lot of work to determine what the advantages and disadvantages are to potentially using phased radar as a potential replacement option for the national radar network in the future.
Talked a little bit about it earlier and about the speed advantage that a phased array radar would have compared to a traditional radar. Um, I know when we're tracking storms here, um, all eyes are we're looking into the winds of the radar. We're looking at the velocity data and how quickly that updates. And depending on what you're looking at, that can be 2.5 to 5 minutes or so now. Um, if PAR is the future, how much different is that? How much of an improvement do we look at there?
So, in terms of what PARS can offer from a volumetric standpoint, just a standard scan, we can do that generally right now anywhere from 60 to 90 seconds, whereas the current radar network would be somewhere between 4 to 7 minutes, depending upon the scanning strategy that's employed. And the current network has ability to kind of rescan low elevations, maybe 2 to 3 times within that time, just the lowest elevation. It also has an ability to rescan a lot of the mid-level altitude elevations as well, and so that can kind of reduce um, the rescans to some extent, maybe by a factor of 2 or 3. But in terms of getting the full depth of the atmosphere, you're not going to be able to get that from the existing network. For PARS, there is something called adaptive scanning, where if we had one or two particular storms of interest, we could do a quick scan around and then hone in on those one or two storms to really get updates that could easily be much lower than 1 minute. But that is something that we're currently working on our research development on. And something that, again, will kind of depend on how many storms you have. If you have 5 or 6 impactful storms, obviously, even with adaptive scanning, that rate was going to slip closer back up to that 1 minute time frame.
If this becomes more of a widely adopted thing, obviously we're talking potential improvements to lead time on storms and potential improvements to maybe giving people all clear on storms as you get that information faster.
Yeah, it can definitely help get the warnings out a little bit earlier. It could definitely give improved confidence in the warnings that you're issuing, particularly for very short-lived tornadoes and things that might be along lines called our quasi-linear convective systems. We get little, very fast spin-ups of tornadoes that maybe only last for themselves a minute or two, but then if they continue to occur several times over the course of a couple of hours, that would give you increased confidence of those warnings downstream. For the larger scale tornadoes, it might be able to give you some increased lead time and confidence to get the warnings out for storms that could produce tornadoes that are very impactful and very violent, and are the ones that are more likely to cause fatalities and injuries.
This is still in the research and development stage. What do you think the timeline of this type of technology looks like? Is this something that's still years away, decades away? And is it, like you said, I guess it may not be totally settled that this is the direction we're going.
Right. I mean, phased radar is one of many potential replacement options for the future radar network. The Weather Service is going to be making those decisions in the coming decade or so, and they're looking to roll out their radar network by around the year 2040 to be completed with that backbone.
Obviously, you guys do a lot of research on different types of radar, different types of technology. Where would you rank um, phased array as far as what's out there.
Can you rephrase your question and far, where did I rank phased array in terms of
Yeah.
what's out there
Um,
for?
Compared to, I guess, like the radars that we have now, the potential radars that we might have in the future. Um, I guess what's the promise of phased array in terms of this is the best technology we could ever have. It's pretty good technology, or it's just an incremental improvement kind of a range.
Right. So, I mean, phaser radar could potentially be transformational because of the flexibility that it lends itself to be able to really, increase the update rates you're getting from the environment from a surveillance standpoint down to 60 to 90 seconds. But then for individual storms to much, much, much faster timeframes. Its flexibility is something that is fairly unique to phase array radar from a surveillance standpoint. Um, it will come at a cost, and so it's not cheap, but there is some hope that some recent initiatives passed by Congress, like the CHIPS Act, will continue to help reduce that cost over time. But the National Weather Service will be doing an excellent job with the Radar Next program, kind of looking at all the alternatives and looking at the different options that are out there to get the best bang for their buck, so to speak.
Years ago, I think I still have the graphic when I was looking up research for this. There was some idea that phased array radar could replace lots of different radars that are in use across the country, say for air traffic and national defense, weather, all at the same time. Is that still a potential future?
The current moment, our focus is on our weather mission, and that is what NOAA's focus is on. There are still there's a lot of work that's done in the military sector to do a lot of uh, tracking of point targets and planes for military applications, and that work has been done for 5 to 6 decades since probably the 70s. For weather applications, it's a little bit more difficult because you're tracking millions and more billions trillions of raindrops in a small volume coverage to try to get a sense as to what that looks like, and therefore the math is quite a bit more complicated and something that takes a lot more research development. And fortunately for us at NSSL, we've been able to demonstrate that we can calibrate dual polarization radar in a robust way, and we're working on ways that could be potentially fielded into an operational system in the future.
Focus back a little more on what the movie was showing off. They were taking these types of radars into the field and essentially wanting to get scans from many different points of one distinct feature. Um, I don't immediately recall if the Vortex products were an NSSL um, project or not, where they took those mobile radars out. Is that something that realistically would be of some kind of scientific usefulness, or something that might be an actual research project in the future?
I think Twisters is a movie, and so there's a lot of things about the movie that are very interesting. And I think in terms of our fieldwork projects, we do go through the process of developing research questions and hypotheses and developing strategies for data collection that fit those research and hypotheses. And so, even though it's not going to be very similar to what is in Twisters, the general premise of how you construct a research project and hypothesis and some of the ways you have to predict where to go, so to speak, are kind of similar. We would be usually having field projects with lots of partners across many universities and many different entities to kind of all work towards a common goal of studying specific phenomena. Sometimes one with some offshoots, sometimes multiple phenomena, all related to the same cause. But we would always be putting together our research questions hypotheses, which was more or less what was shown in Twisters. It was a hypothesis about how to stop a tornado from happening, and culminates at the end in a very exciting ending.
From the technological standpoint, um, a radar north of a storm and a radar south of a storm, are you collecting significantly different data, or is it just same thing, slightly turned on a map?
Well, there's some things you can do. In the case of a bistatic radar where you have two radars looking at it, there are things that you can do that you can't do with a single radar. They, in their movie, were trying to get three radars at once for reasons that are in the movie. I don't want to spoil it. And so it does provide additional information. That is something that you can't get from a single radar.
basically what we're getting at in summation, there's a lot of artistic liberties. I think every meteorologist that watched the movie will fully back that statement, but not all of it's 100% science fiction.
Yeah, there are pieces that are at least loosely based on science, and they certainly had people helping advise them on that. Was my understanding. But even things like looking at multiple radars. I mean that does help you get a three-dimensional retrieval of the winds. So there's areas that are more closely tied to science than others. But I think in terms of the actual process of developing a research question, a hypothesis, and testing it, and in this case, testing it multiple times and maybe having failures and then having to rephrase those hypotheses and come up with a new way of doing things. The scientific process, I think, is absolutely on display in a way that is interesting. In terms of how the exact science works, there's varying degrees of science fiction and science fact there. But it's a movie; it's meant for entertainment, and it was very entertaining and does show some very interesting things.
Um, well, Larry, I really appreciate you taking some time to speak with me today.